The funeral chapel was wrapped in a velvet quietness, the kind that felt too heavy for the living to breathe in. Soft organ music hummed from hidden speakers, mingling with the scent of lilies placed around the small white coffin at the front of the room. Everything was arranged perfectly, the flowers, the photographs, the candles, every detail meant to comfort a grieving family. Except nothing about this moment felt comforting. Not with a police K-9 sprawled at the foot of the coffin, refusing to move. Rex, the department's most disciplined German shepherd, lay perfectly still except for the subtle rise and fall of his chest. His fur was dark and glossy, his muscles tight beneath the surface. Anyone who knew the dog understood he was a model of obedience, a creature shaped by rigorous training, loyalty, and unwavering duty. But today, Rex was immovable, irreversible, a living statue guarding a coffin far too small. Officer Daniel Reeves stood a few feet away, his hands on his hips, brows furrowed. He'd been Rex's handler for almost 5 years, and in all that time, he had never seen the dog behave like this. Not during explosions, not during active shooter drills, not even during the night a suspect pulled a knife on Daniel. Rex always reacted instantly, perfectly, sharp, decisive, controlled. But this was something else entirely. Rex, Daniel whispered, crouching beside him. He touched the dog's collar, the worn leather warm from Rex's body heat. "Come on, buddy, up." Nothing. Rex didn't so much as blink. Daniel's chest tightened. "Why are you doing this?" Inside the coffin lay Emily Carter, a 7-year-old whose life had ended far too early. A framed picture stood nearby, her smiling face, missing front tooth, bright blue eyes reflecting pure innocence. Daniel had stared at that picture more times than he'd admit. Not because he knew Emily, he didn't, but because Rex had reacted to it. The moment he saw the funeral notice on Daniel's desk earlier that morning, Rex had whined, then pawed at the paper, then refused to leave Daniel's side until they got in the car and drove here. Now, seeing the dog trembling against the coffin, Daniel felt a strange and unsettling chill creep down his spine. The funeral director approached nervously, wringing his hands. "Officer Reeves," he whispered, "I'm sorry, but we can't begin the service with a police dog lying by the casket. Families they might misunderstand." Rex lifted his head at the unfamiliar voice and let out a low, guttural growl, the kind of growl that comes from deep inside, from instincts sharpened by danger. Everyone nearby froze. "I'll handle him," Daniel said quickly. He reached for Rex's leash again, but the dog pressed harder against the coffin as if trying to shield it. It didn't look like grief. It looked like protection. Mourners began trickling into the chapel, neighbors, the mother clutching tissues in trembling hands, relatives who wore expressions of shock more than sorrow. They whispered among themselves when they saw the uniformed dog guarding the coffin. Most thought it was touching. Some thought it was peculiar. But then Emily's mother approached the coffin and gasped, Why is he doing that?" She whispered. Her voice cracked on every word, each syllable coated in exhaustion and heartbreak. "I don't know, ma'am," Daniel said gently. "I'm trying to get him to move." But Rex suddenly did something strange. He raised his head slowly, looking directly at Emily's mother. His ears pressed back. His eyes softened with an emotion Daniel couldn't explain. Regret? Pain? Recognition? Sarah Carter, pale and trembling, stared back at the dog. "My daughter. She was afraid of big dogs," she murmured. She would have never gone near one." Others nodded. Emily was known to shrink behind her mother when a dog passed on the street. Daniel opened his mouth to respond, but then a frail, elderly woman spoke up from a nearby pew. "That's not entirely true," she said softly. "I saw Emily petting that very dog 2 weeks ago. Near the old playground behind the gas station, the entire room shifted." Daniel blinked. That's impossible. Rex had never been deployed near that area, never released off duty, never wandered. Sarah shook her head, tears spilling down her cheeks. 2 weeks ago, Emily never went to that playground alone. She wasn't allowed to. She was alone, the neighbor insisted gently. And she looked frightened, like she'd run from something. Rex's body tensed. Daniel's mind spun. Something was wrong, deeply wrong. And it became frighteningly clear when Rex's head jerked toward the chapel doors, ears sharp, muscles alert, a warning rumble building in his throat. Someone had just entered the building. Someone Rex recognized and feared. The dog's growl deepened, and Daniel, with ice creeping into his bloodstream, whispered to himself, "Rex, what in God's name happened between you and that little girl?" The chapel doors creaked open slowly, breaking the fragile quiet. Rex's growl sharpened, rising from his chest like a warning siren. His entire body went rigid, every muscle braced as if he were ready to strike. Daniel turned. It was Mark Carter, Emily's stepfather. He walked in with stiff shoulders and a face carved from stone. No tears, no grief, only the tight press of a man holding a deep, simmering tension beneath his skin. Rex's growl turned into a snarl. Daniel's pulse spiked. He had seen Rex stare down armed suspects, violent criminals, men twice his size, but he had never seen him react like this. Not even close. Mark paused mid-step, eyes flicking toward the dog with an expression that was too hard to read. Confusion? Annoyance? Fear? Sarah Carter, Emily's mother, didn't notice any of it. She was still wiping tears from her cheeks, her gaze locked on the small white coffin. Mark, he won't move, she whispered, voice trembling. He won't leave her. Mark's nostrils flared. It's a dog, Sarah. He doesn't understand what's happening. He just smells. He stopped himself, glancing at the crowd, then forced a stiff smile. It's inappropriate. That's all. Inappropriate. The word hung in the air like a bad smell. Daniel felt Rex press closer to the coffin, tail low, ears forward, protective, defensive. As if Mark Carter wasn't grieving. As if he was the threat. Mrs. Holloway, the elderly neighbor who had spoken earlier, shifted in her seat. Her voice drifted across the chapel again, gentle, but certain. I meant what I said. I saw Emily with that dog. I live across from that playground. I was watering my roses when I spotted them. Sarah's head snapped up, grief-shaken eyes suddenly sharpening with fear. She was with this dog. Alone? Yes. Mrs. Holloway continued, folding her hands. She was sitting on the bench crying. The dog approached her. She didn't scream or run. She actually reached out for him. It surprised me, considering her fear of dogs. Daniel swallowed hard. He remembered every detail of Rex's training logs, every deployment, every off-duty hour. There was no record of Rex ever being near that playground. At any time, Rex's head suddenly dropped, and he let out a low whine, as if remembering something he couldn't express. Sarah pressed a shaking hand to her mouth. Why? Why didn't she tell me she went there? Mark's answer came too quickly, too sharply. She never went there. She was always in the house. Mrs. Holloway frowned. But I saw her. You must have been mistaken. Mark snapped, his voice cold with controlled irritation. Emily wasn't allowed outside that late. A ripple went through Daniel's mind. Mrs. Holloway, he asked gently, what time did you see her? The old woman paused, thinking. Oh, it was nearly dusk. The streetlights were flickering on. Maybe 8:30? Something like that. Daniel's stomach flipped. At 8:30 p.m., Rex had been acting strange at home, pacing the living room, sniffing the windows, whining at the back door, as if he sensed something, as if he wanted to go to her. Sarah's hands trembled violently. Mark, why didn't she tell me she was crying? Mark rubbed the back of his neck, eyes tight. Kids cry. She probably tripped or something. You know how sensitive she was. Sensitive. Another word that didn't fit. Rex suddenly rose to his feet, fur bristling, body angled protectively between the coffin and Mark. His lips curled back, exposing sharp teeth. Control your dog, Mark snapped, stepping back instinctively. He's trained, Daniel said, his voice calm but suspicious. He doesn't react like this unless there's a reason. Mark's jaw clenched so hard the muscles in his temple twitched. Well, maybe the reason is that there's a coffin in the room and a grieving family trying to get through. A funeral. But before he finished, Sarah gasped loudly. She had opened Emily's pink backpack, the one she brought to display photographs and memories. Inside, tucked beneath notebooks and crayons, was a small, folded piece of paper. Sarah lifted it with trembling fingers. It was a drawing, a crayon sketch of a big black dog, unmistakably Rex, standing beside a little girl with tears on her face. Behind them, drawn in harsh red crayon strokes, was the outline of a tall figure towering over them. Rex nudged the drawing gently with his nose, whimpering. Sarah's breath hitched. I've never seen this before. Daniel's hands went cold. Emily had met Rex. She had trusted him. She had drawn him protecting her. But protecting her from what? All eyes slowly drifted toward Mark Carter. His face had gone pale, and Rex growled again, deep, thunderous, and certain, as if the dog finally recognized the very reason he refused to leave Emily's coffin, as if he knew the truth, and the truth had just walked into the chapel. The moment the funeral ended, the moment the final hymn faded into silence, Rex made his move. He didn't walk. He didn't hesitate. He bolted. He lunged forward with such force that Daniel nearly dropped the leash. Morris parted in shock as the German shepherd shot past them like a black arrow, streaking through the fading sunlight. "Rex, hey Rex," Daniel shouted, sprinting after him. But Rex didn't slow down, not even for a second. He leapt over flower arrangements, dodged grieving family members, and raced through the open doors of the chapel as if something urgent, something dangerous, was pulling him forward. Daniel burst outside, lungs burning. "Rex, stop, stop." But the dog was already across the parking lot, his paws pounding the pavement with furious purpose. He wasn't running blindly. He was following a scent. A scent Daniel didn't understand. A scent Rex had recognized the moment Mark Carter walked into that chapel. The church's back lot sloped down into a patch of woods. Thick brush, fallen branches, and damp earth swallowed Rex's form as he pushed deeper into the trees. Daniel followed, stumbling over tangled roots, slipping on wet leaves, heart hammering. "Rex, buddy, slow down," he pleaded. Then he saw the dog skid to a stop near a cluster of large rocks. Rex lowered his nose to the ground, sniffed, whined, and then began digging. His paws ripped through leaves and dirt with desperate, frantic energy. Clumps of wet soil flew behind him. His breathing grew harsh. Daniel reached him and knelt beside him, heart thundering. "What is it, boy? What are you?" Something metallic caught the beam of Daniel's flashlight. Daniel froze. A thin silver chain glinted beneath the dirt. Rex nudged it forward with his nose, whining. Daniel lifted it gently. It was a child's necklace, a small silver locket with a tiny engraved heart. Daniel recognized it instantly. Emily was wearing this in her school photo, but she wasn't wearing it when she died. A cold ache spread through Daniel's stomach. "Why is this here?" he whispered. Rex continued digging, pawing at the same spot. Something else surfaced, something small and soft. Fabric, pink fabric. Daniel's breath caught. A torn piece of pajama sleeve. The same pattern described in the incident report. The same pattern Emily was found wearing at the bottom of the stairs the night she fell. But there was no reason, none at all, for a piece of her pajamas to be in the woods behind the church, unless she had been outside that night, or unless something or someone had dragged her there. The woods stood silent, but the silence felt wrong, heavy. Watching, Rex stiffened suddenly, head snapping toward the church. A voice drifted through the trees. Mark Carter's. Daniel saw him at the back door of the church, speaking sharply to another officer. His gestures were irritated, defensive. He ran a hand through his hair repeatedly, a nervous tic. Rex's fur bristled, ears pinned back. Daniel's stomach twisted. Rex's instincts had never been wrong. What was it that Rex smelled? What memory had lodged itself so deep that the dog reacted like a creature betrayed? Mark glanced toward Daniel, then toward Rex. His eyes narrowed. A flicker of something, anger, fear, crossed his face before he slipped back into the church. Daniel exhaled shakily. He needed to step carefully. If he confronted Mark now without evidence, it would go nowhere. Worse, it would tip him off. But the necklace and the fabric piece, they were evidence. Not enough to accuse, but enough to question. "Rex," Daniel whispered, rubbing the dog's shoulder. "What did she show you? What happened that day?" Rex took a slow step forward, staring into the woods, nose twitching toward a deeper path. It was as if he wanted to keep going, as if this trail wasn't finished. Daniel stood, shoving the necklace and fabric into an evidence pouch. He'd need to reopen the file, quietly, carefully, but before he could take his next step. A whisper of movement rustled the branches above him. Daniel glanced up. A dark shape slipped behind a tree. Someone was watching him. He straightened, pulse accelerating. "Hello?" he called, shining the flashlight into the dense brush. Nothing. No movement. No sound. No reply. But Rex growled low, deep, and certain. Someone had been there. Someone who left the moment they realized Daniel had found something he wasn't supposed to find. As the night wind rustled through the trees, Daniel felt the truth tightening around him like cold fingers. This wasn't an accident. Something happened to Emily. Something the police had missed. Something Rex had witnessed. And someone still nearby didn't want the truth uncovered. Rex barked once, sharp and warning. Whoever had been hiding, they were still out there, watching, waiting, and now they knew Daniel was getting close. Daniel didn't sleep that night, not because he didn't try, but because every time he closed his eyes, he saw the same three things: Emily's drawing, her necklace buried in the woods, and Rex scrolling at Mark Carter with a certainty that chilled him to the bone. By dawn, Daniel was already in his squad car, Rex in the back seat, driving toward the precinct with the necklace and fabric sealed in an evidence bag. On the passenger seat, he shouldn't have reopened the case. Not without permission, not without cause. But there was cause. Real cause, and it was lying in the back of his car, tail down, eyes sharp, unable to relax. Rex never relaxed when danger was close. The precinct was unusually quiet, the halls lit by a flickering row of overhead lights. Daniel headed straight for the records room, pulling out the thick file labeled Carter. EMILY accidental false set it on the table, the folder heavier than he remembered. Or maybe the weight wasn't the paper, it was something else, something he hadn't noticed before. He opened it slowly. Rex sat beside him, ears forward, watching every movement. Photos spilled out the staircase where she fell, the broken banister rail, the paramedics lifting her tiny body. Daniel clenched his jaw. Something about the photos had always bothered him. He picked up the one of the staircase. It showed where Emily supposedly slipped, but the angle, the position of her body, it didn't match a fall. He whispered, "It looked like she was pushed." Rex let out a soft whine, as if confirming what he already feared. Daniel flipped through the statements. Mark Carter's description of the night was nearly half the report. She got out of bed for water. She must have slipped trying to come down the stairs, but the details were to clean. To practice. Daniel muttered under his breath, "She didn't slip." "Did she, buddy?" Rex's ears twitched. There was more. Daniel reached the autopsy details, something he'd skimmed before, but never fully examined. Bruising on both forearms, abrasion marks on the wrist, dirt under her fingernails. He felt his stomach drop. Dirt on a child who died inside a house. He looked at Rex. "You found that necklace in the woods, didn't you?" "She fought someone." Rex made a low, guttural noise. Not a growl, more like pain, a memory resurfacing. Daniel closed the file, rubbing his temples. But something else happened the night Emily died. Something Rex remembered vividly enough that he couldn't leave her coffin. Daniel reached into his vest, pulling out his phone. He dialed the medical examiner's number. After 3 rings, Dr. Foley answered, her voice groggy. "This better be good." "It is," Daniel said. "I need clarification on a case." "Emily Carter." Her tone sharpened instantly. "That case is closed." "I know. I just need one answer." "You found dirt under her nails. Did anyone check what kind of dirt?" A pause. Then Dr. Foley sighed. "We ran a basic test. It wasn't household dust. Too coarse. More like outdoor soil." Daniel's chest tightened. "Did you give that finding to the investigators?" "I did," she said. "But the detective on the case," she hesitated. "Detective who?" Daniel pressed. "Detective Morrow." Daniel froze. Morrow, his superior. The same detective who had been close friends with Mark Carter for over 10 years. "Thanks," Daniel said, hanging up before she could ask more. He stared at the wall, everything clicking into a picture far darker than he expected. If Morrow buried evidence, if Mark had lied, if Emily had been outside that night, then the accident wasn't an accident. What did they do to her? Daniel whispered. Rex whined, lowering his head onto Daniel's knee. Daniel ruffled his fur. "We're going to figure this out. I swear it." He left the records room with the file tucked beneath his arm. But the moment he stepped into the hallway, he stopped cold. Detective Morrow stood at the end of the corridor, arms crossed, eyes hard, expression unreadable. "Reeves," Morrow said, his voice casual. "Heard you were digging around in old files." Daniel kept his face calm. "Just reviewing something." Morrow stepped closer, his shadow stretching across the floor. "You know protocol. You don't reopen a case without going through me." Rex moved between them, body rigid, teeth slightly bared. Morrow raised an eyebrow. "Control your dog." Daniel's fingers tightened around the case file. "He's fine." "Looks like more than fine," Morrow muttered. His gaze dropped to the evidence bag sticking out of Daniel's vest. "What's that?" Daniel tapped the file. "Something I'm adding to my notes." Morrow stared at him for a long moment. Too long. Then he smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You're walking into something you don't understand." "Reeves," he murmured. "Some cases are better left closed." Rex growled, long and low, and Daniel realized something chilling. Morrow wasn't warning him. He was threatening him. Before Daniel could respond, Morrow leaned closer to close and whispered, "You don't want to end up like her." Daniel's heart dropped. Rex lunged forward with a vicious snarl, teeth flashing, and in that moment, Daniel knew this wasn't just a bad case. This was a cover-up, a dangerous one, and he had just become a target. Rain hammered the chapel roof like 1,000 small fists as the funeral entered its final hour. People murmured prayers, wiped tears, clutched tissues, but no one, not a single soul, was ready for what happened next. Coda, the grieving canine who had refused to leave Lily's coffin since the moment it arrived, suddenly rose to his feet. It startled everyone. His movements were slow, intentional, almost purposeful. His eyes were locked onto the polished white coffin as if listening to something no human could hear. Detective Mariana Reyes noticed it first. "Coda," she whispered, stepping forward cautiously. The dog didn't bark, didn't whine. He simply leaned closer to the coffin and pressed his ear against the side. His ears twitched, his body tensed, his tail stiffened in a straight line. Then came the sound, a low, faint thump from inside the coffin. Reyes froze. "Tell me I didn't hear that." But Coda jerked back from the coffin, ears forward, muscles rigid, issuing a sharp, high-pitched whine, the same warning signal he used when alerting officers to a living human, buried under rubble during search and rescue work. "Oh my God," one officer whispered. "Is there movement in there?" Parents gasped. The priest stepped backward, trembling. Lily's mother clutched her chest, unable to breathe. Reyes placed her palms on the coffin lid. "Lily, sweetheart, if you can hear me, knock again." Silence. A crushing, icy silence. Then, thump, this time louder, clearer. A scream tore through the crowd, but it wasn't fear. It was hope. Raw, overwhelming hope. "Get the tools," Reyes barked. "Now move." Officers sprinted toward the patrol vehicles. People dropped to their knees, sobbing. Lily's mother collapsed into her husband's arms, shaking uncontrollably. The world around her blurred, but one image remained sharp. Coda, standing guard with his paws pressed against the coffin, whining urgently as if begging everyone to hurry. Within seconds, officers returned with crowbars, rescue tools, anything they could find. Reyes took the first crowbar and wedged it beneath the seal. On three. 1, 2, crack. The lid loosened. Coda barked, the loudest, most desperate bark he'd ever made, and shoved his nose under the gap, as if pulling the coffin open himself. Another officer grabbed the opposite side. "Lift." They heaved. The lid flew open. People gasped. Some screamed. Lily lay still inside, too still. A pale, tiny figure surrounded by soft white fabric. For one horrible second, no one dared move. No one dared breathe. Then Lily's eyelids fluttered. Her tiny fingers twitched. A small gasp escaped her lips as if she were taking her first breath after being underwater. Reyes leaned in. "Lily, can you hear me?" Lily's eyes cracked open, unfocused, glassy. "But alive? Coda," she whispered, barely audible. Her mother burst forward with a cry so loud it echoed off the chapel walls. But paramedics quickly intercepted, lifting Lily carefully onto a stretcher. "She's breathing," one medic shouted. "Weak pulse, but she's alive." Move. Chaos exploded. Officers cleared pathways. Guests sobbed uncontrollably. Lily's father sprinted behind the stretcher, stumbling through tears. But through the chaos, only one figure remained eerily calm. Coda. He trotted alongside the stretcher, his head inches from Lily's hand. Even as paramedics loaded her into the ambulance, he refused to step back. "Coda, buddy, you can't," an officer began. But Lily's trembling hand reached out, just barely, and touched Coda's fur. A faint smile lifted her lips. The ambulance crew exchanged glances. "Let the dog ride with her," one finally said. "Whatever happened here, she needs him." Coda leaped into the ambulance and immediately curled beside her, resting his head on her arm. The doors slammed shut. The siren wailed to life. The crowd stood frozen, a sea of disbelief, hope, and shock. Officer Daniels turned to Reyes, pale as a ghost. How is this possible? She was declared dead. They ran every test. She was cold. No heartbeat. What did we just witness? Reyes stared at the departing ambulance, her voice barely a whisper. "I don't know, but we just unearthed something far bigger than a medical mistake." She swallowed hard, goosebumps racing down her arms. Something in that coffin kept her alive, long enough for Coda to find her. She looked down at the coffin, now empty, now terrifying in its mystery, and something glimmered beneath the burial pillow. A small, metallic object. Reyes knelt, reached in, and lifted it. Her face drained of color. Daniel stepped closer. "What is that?" Reyes turned the object over in her palm, stunned. It's something that shouldn't be here. Something that explains everything. Her voice trembled. And if it's real, someone did this to her on purpose. The ambulance's siren faded into the distance, carrying Lily to the hospital, leaving a stunned crowd behind. But Rex, now calm only in the presence of his little charge, returned to Daniel's side. His coat was matted with dirt, his eyes still sharp, scanning the edges of the chapel grounds as if daring anyone to approach. Daniel knelt, scratching behind Rex's ears, voice low and steady. You found her, buddy. You did exactly what you were trained to do. But we need answers. You know it, don't you? Rex whined softly, pawing at the ground toward the church's rear woods, the same woods where he had unearthed Emily's necklace and torn pajamas. He refused to leave the edge of the trees. Daniel's heart sank. He understood. The dog wasn't finished. There was more. Something Rex had seen. Something no human had noticed. You want me to follow? Daniel asked, his voice barely audible over the whispering wind. Rex bolted without hesitation, Daniel sprinting behind him. The forest swallowed them in a tangle of roots and branches. Leaves clung to Daniel's jacket. His boots slipped in mud, but he didn't care. He had followed Rex before through dangerous situations, chases in alleys, suspect apprehensions, even armed standoffs. But this felt different. This was personal. Rex stopped abruptly at a mound of disturbed earth near a pile of moss-covered rocks. He pawed violently, ears erect, growling low. Daniel knelt beside him, shining his flashlight over the area. Something glinted faintly in the beam. Daniel's stomach dropped. He dug through the dirt with his hands, careful not to damage whatever lay beneath. After a few moments, his fingers closed around a small, charred cell phone, partially crushed but intact. He held it up, examining it. The device was scorched, blackened, like someone had tried to destroy it. Daniel's heart raced. This could be the key. Rex's growls sharpened, almost as if urging him to act quickly. Daniel carefully bagged the phone and pulled out his gloves, his breath visible in the crisp night air. Back at the precinct, the phone was handed over to the digital forensics unit. Hours later, Daniel leaned over the technician's desk, eyes wide with anticipation. The technician's face turned pale. We were able to recover some files, voice notes, timestamps from the 2 nights before she disappeared. Daniel swallowed hard. Play them. The first recording was Emily's voice, soft, shaking, unmistakably terrified. Mommy's asleep. He's angry again. I don't want him to find me. Daniel's throat tightened. He looked down at Rex, who lowered his head, whining softly as though he could hear the terror in her words. The next file played louder, more chaotic. A man's voice barked orders, shouting over a child's screams. Furniture scraping, objects breaking, then silence. Daniel gripped the edge of the table. She tried to escape. He whispered. She tried to get out. Rex nudged Daniel's arm. The dog's eyes never left the technician. Another file loaded automatically. This one was time-stamped 3 minutes before she was declared dead. Daniel's hands trembled as the audio played. She's escaping. Rex said he'd protect me. I'm going out the window. Emily's trembling voice whispered. Then came the sound of violent banging, then a man shouting angrily, "Get back here." The line went dead. Daniel staggered back, heart racing. He did this. Rex growled deeply, stepping forward and pawing at the floor, insisting. The dog had led Daniel to the evidence because he knew the truth, because he had witnessed what no human had dared see. Daniel's mind raced. He left her in danger. He left her to die. He looked down at Rex, breathing ragged. We're going to finish this. We're going to make them pay for what they did to her. Rex barked once, sharp and commanding, as if confirming the plan. Outside, the storm had grown heavier, lightning flashing over the tree line. Daniel's phone buzzed a text from an unknown number. Stop digging, or she dies for real next time. Daniel's blood ran cold. He looked at Rex. The dog's ears twitched. He was ready, and he would not leave Emily's side. Daniel made his decision. No caution, no delay. They would confront the man who had destroyed his little girl's life, who had almost killed her. Rex led the way, through mud, under low branches, over slippery rocks straight toward the Carter house. Daniel followed, flashlight trembling in one hand, the recovered evidence bag in the other. The house was dark, windows black, doors shut tight. The air was thick with the smell of damp wood and old paint. Rex stopped at the back door, growling low, teeth bared. His stance was defensive, but controlled. Daniel whispered, "Go in, buddy. Lead the way." The dog barked sharply, as if saying, "This is where it happened. This is where justice starts." Daniel's fingers tightened around his weapon and badge. He glanced down at Rex, whose eyes gleamed with unwavering focus. And in that instant, Daniel knew one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever waited inside, they would face it together. A shadow moved behind the curtain of the living room window. Rex stiffened. Daniel's pulse raced. The confrontation had begun. The shadow moved again, fleeting and desperate, behind the living room curtain. Daniel's heart pounded in his chest as he crouched low, keeping close to Rex. The dog's ears were forward, teeth bared, growling in warning. "Stay close, buddy," Daniel whispered. His fingers tightened around the flashlight and his gun, though he hoped it wouldn't come to that. Rex had tracked them here for a reason. The dog knew the truth, knew what the man hiding inside had done. Daniel kicked the back door gently. It creaked, protesting, but didn't open. He nudged it further with his shoulder. A lock clicked. Mark Carter's voice rang out, sharp, dangerous. "Who's there?" he demanded, pacing in the darkness. Rex growled, low and menacing, as if sensing the man's guilt. Daniel stepped inside cautiously. The living room was dark, furniture overturned, and the air smelled faintly of bleach and dust. Then movement. A figure darted toward the staircase. Daniel barked, "Stop, police." Mark Carter froze mid-step. His face was pale, eyes wide, but his hands were clenched into fists. You don't understand. It was an accident." Rex barked again, louder this time, lunging forward. He didn't attack blindly. He positioned himself between Daniel and Mark, refusing to allow the man any chance to flee. Daniel took a deep breath. "An accident? Emily tried to escape your house 2 nights ago. She tried to get out, and you almost killed her." Mark's jaw tightened. "I told her to behave. She wouldn't listen. She pushed me. You left her to die," Daniel cut in sharply. "You left her, and now we know it." Rex's growl intensified, warning, demanding. Daniel noticed his fur bristling, the low rumble vibrating through the floorboards. It was the same growl Rex used when he confronted armed suspects, the one that meant immediate danger. Mark Carter's eyes flicked to Rex, his bravado faltering. "Get that dog away from me," he yelled, but his voice shook. Daniel stepped closer, carefully. "You need to explain. Mark, where's the evidence? The voice recordings? The injuries?" Mark stumbled backward, tripping over the torn carpet, his hands reaching desperately toward anything for support. "I didn't mean. She ran. I didn't know." Daniel shook his head. "She tried to tell us, Mark. She left notes. She drew pictures. She hid in places you thought you could control. And Rex." Daniel glanced at the dog. Rex knew the whole time. That's why he wouldn't leave her coffin, Mark swore, pacing frantically. His shadow danced on the walls in the dim flashlight beam. "You can't prove anything. It's circumstantial. I. Then a small sound came from the bedroom. A soft cough, a fragile voice. "Daddy? Lily?" Mark froze. His face twisted. Panic overtook him. She's alive." Daniel's stomach tightened. "Yes, she's alive. Because of Rex. And now, so are you." In court, Mark Carter's composure shattered completely. It wasn't supposed to happen. He screamed. I wanted to scare her." Daniel stepped forward, holding up his badge. "Emily's safe now, but the police department has every file, every recording, every bruise documented. You are under arrest for the attempted murder of a minor and child endangerment. You're coming with us." Mark's eyes darted toward the door. He lunged. Rex barked, sharp and explosive. He lunged as well, tackling Mark to the ground, teeth flashing. But he didn't bite. Not fully. Rex pinned him, teeth snapping inches from his shoulder, growling, holding him in place. Daniel ran forward, securing Mark with handcuffs. He glanced down at Rex, kneeling beside the dog. "Good boy," he murmured. "You protected her. You kept her alive." Mark Carter thrashed in the handcuffs, screaming, "She's my stepdaughter. She was disobedient. It's not murder." Daniel's eyes were hard, cold with conviction. "You left her to die. That's exactly what it is, and you will answer for it." Rex's growl subsided, but his stance remained firm. He pressed his head gently against Daniel's leg, then glanced at the bedroom door, alert but calm. Lily's small hand emerged from the doorway. She walked slowly toward Rex, eyes wide. "Coda?" she whispered, voice trembling. Rex lowered himself to the floor. Lily ran into his fur, hugging him as if her life depended on it, because it had. Daniel watched, chest tight. The case that had seemed unsolvable, the dark mystery of Emily's death, the months of unanswered questions, all had led to this moment. Rex had not only found her, he had uncovered the truth, and justice, long delayed, was finally catching up. The first officer on the scene spoke softly into his radio. Suspect in custody, victim secured, end of pursuit. Daniel looked at Rex, who wagged his tail faintly, eyes gleaming. The dog had refused to leave Emily's coffin for days. Now he had finally fulfilled his mission. Daniel bent down, scratching behind Rex's ears. You did it, buddy. You did what no one else could. Lily giggled weakly, brushing dirt from Rex's fur. You saved me, she whispered. You're my hero. Rex leaned into her, eyes closing briefly. He didn't just save her from death. He saved her from silence, from the secret terror she endured. And as police lights flickered outside, Mark Carter being escorted into the waiting patrol car, Daniel realized the truth that had been hidden in plain sight. Some heroes don't wear badges. Some heroes have fur and fur paws. And some truths can only be uncovered by the ones who never stop watching, never stop guarding. Even in the face of death. The morning sun poured through the hospital windows, illuminating Lily's pale, but now steady face. Machines beeped gently in the background, a soft rhythm marking the fragile line between life and death she had crossed. Rex lay curled at the foot of her bed, head resting lightly on her blanket, eyes never leaving her face. He had spent the night keeping vigil, refusing food, water, or rest. His loyalty, his protective instincts, had carried her through. Detective Daniel Reeves stood quietly in the doorway, watching the pair. He rubbed his neck tiredly, heart still pounding from the confrontation the night before. Mark Carter was in custody, and the evidence gathered by Rex had ensured the man would face justice. But the weight of what Lily had endured pressed heavily on him. Lily stirred, opening her eyes slowly. Her gaze found Rex first, and a faint smile tugged at her lips. Coda, she whispered, voice hoarse but filled with wonder. You saved me. Rex let out a soft whine and nudged her hand gently, his dark eyes glimmering with something almost human relief, love, pride. Daniel felt a lump rise in his throat. You're lucky, Daniel said softly, stepping forward. Not many people have a hero like him. You're going to be okay now, Lily. He's not just your dog. He's your guardian. Her mother, Sarah Carter, entered the room quietly, hands trembling as she reached for Lily. Tears streamed down her face as she pressed her daughter close. Oh, my baby, she whispered, rocking her gently. I thought I lost you. I thought. Daniel gave them a moment before speaking again. The most important thing is that she's alive. That's all that matters now. But even as relief flooded the room, Daniel felt a twinge of sorrow. The other coffin at the funeral, the one Rex had guarded for days, had not been empty. In the usual sense of mourning, it had been a reminder of the risk Lily had faced, of the secrets that had almost taken her from the world entirely. And Rex had been steadfast, refusing to leave the coffin, refusing to abandon her even in the face of grief and uncertainty. Later that afternoon, the hospital staff allowed a brief moment outside. Lily, still wrapped in her blanket, was carried gently into the sunshine. Rex walked beside her, tail wagging slowly, but ever vigilant. A small crowd had gathered, neighbors, friends, and a few of the officers who had worked tirelessly on the case. They watched silently, understanding the bond between the little girl and the dog that had defied protocol, that had seen through lies and danger and refused to give up. Lily knelt slowly on the soft grass. Rex sat down in front of her, lowering his head until it rested against her knees. She stroked his fur, her small fingers tracing the familiar lines along his back. You kept me safe, she said again. I wasn't alone. You were with me. Rex pressed closer, his warm body a shield, his steady breathing a reminder of the vigilance he had maintained for days. Daniel stood back, watching, a quiet pride swelling in his chest. The story that had begun in tragedy was now turning toward hope. Justice had been served, life had been preserved, and the bond between a girl and her dog had proven stronger than fear, deception, and death. The crowd watched as Lily's mother spoke, voice breaking. I don't know how to thank you, Daniel. Or you, Rex. You both. You saved my daughter. You saved her life. Rex barked softly, tail wagging in acknowledgement, as if he understood every word. But the final act of this story was yet to come. That evening, Daniel returned to the chapel, the same chapel where Rex had refused to leave Lily's coffin. It was quiet now, still echoing with the sorrow and shock of what had unfolded. He knelt before the small, empty coffin that had once been the center of grief and now stood as a symbol of survival.